This podcast is brought to you by Amusement Warehouse Magazine, the industry's largest trade publication. We cover amusement parks, carnivals, fairs, festivals, history, safety columns. We really got it all when it comes to the amusement business. Only remaining print publication in the amusement industry on a regular basis. So if you're interested in what the amusement industry has to offer, subscribe today. You can subscribe by logging on to amusementwarehouse.com, carnivalwarehouse.com, or amusementparkwarehouse.com. Welcome to another Amusement Warehouse podcast. Our guest today is Seth Jennings of Integrity Express Logistics. Does a lot of brokering and moving. If you wondered how the carnivals get down the road nowadays and move around, a lot of them use brokers. And Seth has been in the industry and has some insight into logistics and moving, and going to be interesting. At least some insight. I hope you know.
Hope a little bit. We all wing it these days, right?
That's right. Where are you located? It looks like you're in an exotic dress there.
Tampa, Florida.
Tampa, nice.
Yeah, born and raised. Got right down the street from Gibtown, and
are you? So you're Ruskin or so?
No, I'm in Tampa.
Oh, you're in Tampa,
but
okay.
Not too far away from Gibson, though.
Yeah, I worked with the Florida State Fair a couple of years, so I got really used to going there twice a month, and I love Tampa. It's such a great place.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's definitely become a hot spot of the country these days. It's getting a little too packed.
Yeah, it is. So many people I talk to, they're moving to Tampa. They're going to Tampa, doing the thing in Tampa. And, I'm familiar with it because it's a hub for the carnival business in a sense, at least on the East Coast. And, that's pretty neat. So you got in the business, though, in an unusual way. You worked for Galaxy, and you were like the truck guy, right? You went around and sold parts to people.
Yeah, I was one of the truck guys. My buddy Chris Robbins, he's still a truck guy. He's Chris. Actually big shout out to him. He's in Salem, Virginia right now, hanging out with Degler.
July 4th. That's right.
Yep. And he started with Galaxy, and then he kind of brought me upon and got me involved, and I took over the West Coast truck and did that for about 4.5, 5 years, and really got to be brought into the carnival industry. Obviously, it's a tight knit group, and so
that's interesting coming in.
It was definitely.
Did you get training? Like, did he say, "Hey, I got to introduce you to these guys first before you go out there"? Were you a West Coast guy at all, or not really?
No, never. Born and raised here in Tampa, Florida. Both me and my buddy Chris, we grew up together at a very young age. We knew each other when we were like 4 or 5 years old, and so we've just continued our relationship throughout our lifetime. And then when he brought me in, Todd, he was the West Coast truck driver at the time, Todd Kuntz, and so
Todd was doing it himself. Okay.
Yeah, Todd was doing it himself, and he was looking for a kind of a replacement for himself at the time. And so
how about Scott?
It was time for him to get off the road. Oh, Scott likes the office. He's an office. He's an office guy. Scott was on the truck for a while back in the early days of Galaxy, but and so he wasn't afraid to get out there either. But
I didn't realize Todd was on the road. I didn't realize Todd was on the road. That's interesting.
Yeah, he started, from what I understand, he was on the East Coast, and then when they brought Chris on, he jumped out to the West Coast and kind of started the routes for both of those sides. And then, when I started, I allowed him to have some office time. So that's where they are now.
So did Todd sort of train you to introduce you to people?
Yeah, so I actually went out with Chris. My very first fair was I flew out to Syracuse right after getting my CDL, and met up with Chris in Syracuse and finished out the year with him from that point on.
When was that?
That was, oh God, 2015, maybe 2016, one of those years.
So is Wade Shows was the carnival still then?
Yes. Yep. Yep. It was Wade Shows, and I believe I remember meeting Bob DeStefano there for the first time. That was that
Yeah.
year. And yeah,
I was
it was
probably there, honestly.
there was a lot of people there, that's for sure. A lot of people that I still, were putting two and two together because, I was very green. I got straight off the airport and met up at a hotel bar. And as many people in our industry know, I got Joey Fallered pretty good.
You got him pretty good?
No, he got me pretty good.
Oh, Joey
I'm
Fallon.
sure everybody knows hanging out with Joey Fowler from at a bar is
that's dangerous.
Never really exactly. And that was my introduction into the industry.
Really?
So it was a good night.
I'm going to see Joey in a couple weeks, actually, at a fair. He brings in some games for me. I've known Joey a long time. He's actually at the Meadowlands now, I think.
Yep, I think so. Yeah, so we started with that, and then after that year wrapped up, I really got, I did my first IAPA with Galaxy, and then moved into the Gibtown Trade Show, and then right out of that, we went out to see RCS out at the Houston Livestock. And
what'd you think of that when you saw that?
Oh man, that was it's unbelievable, to be honest. The amount of work that goes into that, and the amount of people that come into there, and it's one hell of a show, that's for sure.
Well, yeah. One of my first experiences in this business outside of I was working for Amusements of America a little bit, and I went out to a marketing meeting for the IFE, and I went to Houston and saw RCS for the first time. This is a long time ago, and I just was bowled over by the stuff that they did and how amazing it was, and it just they really did things differently back then. It was really, really educational to see them and watch how they've grown and changed over the years. Is really neat. I'd like to see them again soon. It's been a little while since I've seen them. So you met RCS as your first West Coast show, even though they were kind of East by that point.
Yep.
That point in the year.
Yeah. And then I kind of tailed with Todd for a little bit. I got to meet Butler out at Sacramento, and then RCS again down in, I think it was Costa Mesa. And that was actually before, all of that Houston stuff. That was before the Syracuse. That was like, hey, let's introduce you to what this job really entails, and make sure we do this before we put you on a truck and, in CDL school, and make sure it's something you actually want to do. And flew out there, hung out with Todd for like 10 days, and kind of met with both of those shows, and got to see the whole setup of both worlds for there. And then flew back home, did CDL school, flew up to Syracuse and did that, and then reconvened in the following year with Houston, and started off my year with that, and started making my way out west.
So you had to learn you had to learn electric too. Did you know electric much, or not really? Or
I mean, not like an electrician, but I had a basic understanding. So, but definitely had to get some good training under my belt. Chris Robbins was obviously very knowledgeable at that time. His dad is an electrician by trade, so it kind of comes naturally to Chris, and he did a really good job at just training me and being a go-to for getting me up to par to be able to at least, I would never consider myself an electrician, but at least be able to sell the products that we had on the truck and kind of help in some direction.
So when you say West Coast, like you didn't just literally stick to the coast, did you, or were you?
No, everything from the Mississippi west.
Wow.
And yeah, so it was quite the journey. I mean, it would on our way back, on my way out, I would hit, some East Coast spots, but and then on the way back, we would play Jackson, Mississippi. We would go up to Raleigh every now and then. We would do we would do some East Coast stuff once we were back this way or heading back out, So I got hanging out with Chris for that first half for the second half of my first year, I got to meet all the East Coast guys as well, and grew good relationships with pretty much everybody in the industry. There's a lot of people that I consider family, and that's kind of how it becomes once you're in. You kind of become part of the family, and there was a lot of people that really welcomed me in with open arms, and that's after knowing what I know from about the industry these days. It's that's kind of a special thing.
Absolutely. It's hard to or it's intimidating, I guess, to get in the first time. Were you dealing a lot with owners or mostly with purchasing people, or I guess it depends on the show, but
Yeah, both. Everybody has their own buying power, and then there's certain people that where the owners, you always have to deal with them when you go to collect the bill.
there's
But
nothing scarier for a show owner than the trucks pulling up and your guy go there and start throwing stuff off the truck, and then you get the bill a little while later. You go,
yeah,
holy
for
mackerel!
sure.
What
Yep,
the
that
heck
was
went
that
up
was
and
always
over?
that was a fun time. But no, it was everybody and anybody. I mean, even people, the truck is quite a sight to see. I don't know if you've ever experienced one of the Galaxy trucks, but
Of course, yeah.
it's a work of art. And when you got all these flashing lights, and it looks like you're showing all these tools, and it looks like a snap-on tool truck. There's a lot of draws a lot of interest. And when we're parked in the parking lots at times, even the fair people going to the fair, come onto the truck like, what the heck is this thing?
You could have been exhibiting.
Thinking we're part of the amusement,
Yeah.
not that we weren't a part of it, but, thinking we were an attraction for them when really we're there for the actual fair. So.
Convenience of the customer. Well, it's when you think about it, it's a kind of a neat thing because it's a throwback in a certain sense. Like you're going to them and bringing them the stuff, and now with the internet and drop shipping, you can get stuff pretty easy. But those trucks really play a super important role still with
Yes.
shows. They wait for you to come, or they coordinate so that you'll be at a certain spot or wherever else,
Yep.
and it hasn't dropped off because of the internet. I wonder. Well, I guess you're time span isn't that long.
Yeah, I'm a little bit removed, but
Yeah.
I'm still pretty involved. I talk to Scott and Todd quite frequently, and and obviously my buddy Chris, he actually just bought a house away, like maybe 5 blocks away from my house, about a year ago. So we're still a very tight knit kind of group, and so the biggest thing about the trucks is there's a lot of stuff that is. It's a lot of specialty equipment,
Yeah.
stuff that's made for the amusement world that you really just can't go to Home Depot or Granger and these types of stores that are stationary, and go and get the things you need. There might be workarounds, things that you can always get, that you can kind of make things work, but never. I don't. To be honest, I don't know where you can go out and get a cam lock, just for instance, without it being a cheap throwaway that's probably going to cause more problems than being a successful piece of equipment for your show, So with the specialties that go into the Galaxy truck, it becomes quite demanding.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about because when you think about even like the old stock, like Allentown Toy used to come and drive, or maybe they still do, I don't know, but a lot of that sort of delivery has gone by the way. Like for regular people, the Schwann's food people or something like that would drive, and sell you stuff and bring it to your house, and it's
Yep.
neat. I just saw the Galaxy truck the other day, actually, up in New York. I was
Nice.
where I was at some spot. I saw it, but it was interesting to see, and it brought back a few memories. It's great that they still do great. I mean, it is a great service when you're there and you need some stuff. And then if you're at a big fair like you're in Syracuse, all the concessionaires, even the concessionaires in the independent midway, probably run to you. Oh, I need
definitely.
or I need some wire, I need whatever, and the shop's right there. It's great. Do any of the fairs
sure.
like give you a little bit of a crap about being on the ground sometimes, or they mostly welcome when you come in?
Mostly welcoming. There's a few of them I know. Like the Meadowlands, they consider you a vendor, so they want to get your information and kind of get some uh, you know uh, I
Rent?
guess their fee. Yeah, exactly, or stuff like that. But nobody, most of the time, also the Meadowlands is also one that kind of goes through a lot of changes as far as requirements and inspection requirements. So, I did the Meadowlands one year by myself, and that was quite the challenge because they had just gone and redone a lot of their concessionaires inspection requirements, and so lead lines were nonstop. Just trying to meet the requirements for what they were at that time making a change for. So,
It's also
that having
privately owned, so I guess
being
different.
yeah, exactly. Being on site definitely is a huge help to the industry, and as far as I saw it, coming from that side of it, I was a busy person that week, so it was fun. Sometimes you have to put in long hours, coming from any part of the amusement industry.
And you got to be available when they need you on the
Oh
weekends.
yeah,
Or,
yep. There's
that's
no
the deal.
stopping.
Yeah, I love sometimes when you deal with somebody in this industry and they go, "It's Saturday. I'll call you on Monday." Like that's when we're busy. That's when we make money is on the weekend, and they
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
get it.
Yep,
Um,
that's that kind of rolls into what I'm doing now with the
yeah,
brokering, and you just got to stay available, and at any given time you can get a phone call for hey, I need 10 trucks right now,
Hmm.
and but yeah, that everything happens in on the roll of a dime in this industry for sure, and you just got to make it happen. Everybody rolls with the punches.
So how did you transition out of Galaxy and into to this project you're with now, and what made you do it?
Yeah, so well, I met my beautiful wife back in 2018, and we ended up starting a family. And with that being said, I know there's a lot of families that grow up, especially in the carnival industry, and they keep their families on the road. That wasn't necessarily one of the routes that I really wanted to go. And
Just to be
my
clear,
wife,
Scott and Todd were not willing to build the baby room within the Galaxy truck for you.
no, 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 they weren't. That would, I don't
They
think
could have
that would
built a
be the
nice little
best step.
nursery with all the equipment they got in there. It could have been
Yeah, that would have
state
driven
of the
me
art.
nuts, though. I tell you that. But no, it was, it kind of made a decision to just kind of want to, ground my roots a little bit, and come off the road. And so we had our she's now 5 years old. And we had her, and kind of changed my life. And so I needed something more permanent and stationary. Not more permanent. I had a permanent job with Galaxy,
Yeah.
but more stationary. And being at home was the choice I made. And so I got into freight brokering, and at that time, I didn't even know that freight brokering was a thing at the time. But my wife kind of had a connection through her hair salon. She owns a hair salon here in Tampa, and one of her clients did this type of thing, and so kind of got brought in and started to get my feet wet in this part, and kind of had to, let me see, establish myself to the conforms that the company would typically like before I was able to break into the carnival industry, and
So
start
you brought
helping
it up
out.
to them at some point. He said, "Hey, I
Yeah.
know a lot of
So,
carnivals and we can move them around." And the guy said, "What are you crazy?"
well, yeah, I jumped a lot of hurdles for sure. With the intricacies of the carnival industry, um, there was a lot of insurance battles, and a lot of uh, not normalcies to the freight industry. So with all that being said, when I brought it up, I did get some backlash only because, it was not normal, not what not what the company had kind of grown on, and they were maybe a little scared of change. But basically, it was the insurance that was really holding us back at the time, and kind of just told us like, hey, these are the requirements. And so when we took it to the insurance, they were a little hesitant. And then, as I kind of got established on my own footing through the normalcies of the company, I kind of got a little bit more. I feel like I got a little bit more entrusted, and we battled with the insurance and kind of went through the hoops and the hurdles, which ended up being probably a good year and a half to 2 years before we finally got to the conclusion that we could, and the resolution that we could go ahead and start running some carnival equipment. And the insurance is a very tricky thing when it comes to brokering, because most of the time, especially in the carnival industry, this was the biggest hurdle, was that the cargo is usually, in the trucking world, is usually loaded onto a van or a flatbed or a reefer truck, and the cargo is the cargo itself. When you're dealing with the carnival industry, a lot of what I do for the carnival these days is hauling a ride, and the ride itself is the cargo. So when the cargo touches the ground, it now requires a different type of insurance. And so a lot of that gets mistaken by, and I don't mean to put it out there that everybody's doing it wrong, but a lot of that gets mistaken by all the other brokerages around the country, that just consider it being a normal load, and it's not necessarily a normal load, because that cargo is touching the ground, and it's a little bit different because the actual wheels touch the ground, and that is the cargo essentially. So there was a lot of hurdles to jump through that and actually get it correct, and that's how we managed to make it work.
That's pretty good. Was it your thought right away when you went there to eventually haul loads for the show?
No, not necessarily, because one, being out on the midways with these carnivals, I got to see all of their trucks bringing stuff in. Most of the time that I saw a truck, it was let's see, a stock truck, let's say, for a game, dumping off tons of stuffed animals for the games. And so that was really the only time that I actually saw it. If there was a ride being moved, it was being moved by mainly a show truck. And a lot of these guys own their own trucks. And sometimes, I didn't put two and two together that, more of the times or not, they're either spending a lot of dead money in a way by sending that truck back empty and not getting a load to take them back, and at least getting fuel cost out of it, but just to pick up their ride and doing a double back. Now that makes sense a lot of times when you're only jumping 50 or 200 miles, and you can do a couple of loads in a day, that would make sense. Some of these guys, let's just throw a hypothetical, RCS jumping from Phoenix to Houston and then having to double back and drive 1,500 miles empty, just sometimes doesn't equate into a good dollar sign. So that's where everybody will take a load, start setting it up, and sometimes I'll get the call like, hey, we need 10, 20, 30, sometimes 60 trucks to get it done. Or even in the stressful times when you have, you close on a Sunday night and you got to open on a Wednesday or a Thursday, why would you double everybody back? And when you're losing guys that could be setting up. So we come into play for a lot of the shows a lot of the times, but it definitely was not something that I initially thought of right off the bat, until I really started to kind of talk to the carnival industry a little bit more about, and kind of get my foot into the door on this side of the industry.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that, the carnivals used to own everything. I mean, truck wise, they used to have all the trucks and they'd move and they'd
Yep.
double back. And there were some, and there probably still are some drivers that sort of were out there that worked for the carnival industry, but it was kind of specialized guys. And then you started getting to the brokers, but they could be sometimes unreliable, or other times in which is nothing more frustrating is they come, they say, I'm not going to take that load, or I'm not going to move that load, and they drive off
For
and
sure.
you're stuck. So you got to have a sort of a mix. But I guess you've been able to overcome a lot of that, and
Yeah, it still happens. Believe it or not, it's a very tough industry to work on this side, because you do have, you have to do the job correctly, and you do have those guys that simply are, a person behind a wheel that don't know anything about truck driving realistically, but somehow they got their CDL and they want to move trucks. And there's the companies such as Amazon or Walmart's, where you just have product on a dry van that just sits there and it just needs to get from point A to point B. And the carnival industry in specifics, it goes way on beyond those normalcies of that job pertaining. So, a lot of these guys are just used to doing dry vans, so they're not used to doing flatbeds or seeing carnival equipment. Seeing a grand wheels torn down, put on a flatbed trailer, and a lot of these guys just get scared and nervous. And we do the best we can on our side to vet every one of ours. And we, over the past 3.5 seasons that we've done carnival loads, we've grown a very good knowledge base as far as carriers that can do the job and do it well, and know how to go beyond the scope of just hooking a trailer and taking it somewhere. But it is also very hard to have those guys in the time that in the place at the time that we need them. So they're always trying to make money. And, if I try to tell this guy, go to, Knoxville, Tennessee, and drop this trailer off, but then, I'm going to need you next week for the same load, what is he supposed to do for the week? Sit there and wait? So, that's the kind of, he's got to find another load that he can make money and do something with. So that takes him to Chicago, and, then he's out of your area, because he's not going to deadhead all the way back to pick up your one load. So it makes it a little difficult. We have people and good guys in all different parts of the country that we can kind of reach out to, and hope that, we can get them at the time that we need them. Other than that, we have a database within our company that we can see where those guys are located, and what their history is specifically with our company. So we can reach out to them at that time, whether we worked with them or not, specifically to our carnival loads. Or we can, obviously, every broker has load boards that you can post it up and kind of get, these guys to call in. And then we go through our own vetting process to make sure that, where they have the right equipment, and that they can do the job successfully without, hopefully too many worries.
And some of the loads to add to the problem, I guess, are specialized in a certain way, like single axle, or you always have a couple of rides that are unique as far as their needs, and you send the wrong truck, it can't move it, or it can't get under it, and
oh yes, yeah, we one of this industry's, the carnival industry's things is we get a lot of these rides built from overseas, and so they have different requirements or guidelines that they build these trailers onto. And so a lot of these have these really short noses, where the kingpin to the landing gear is just god awfully short, considering, when we talk into the world of the trucks made in America, or that we run here in America. And the standard semi truck, at least from my opinion, does not have the fifth wheels, the sliding fifth wheels that go, where they need them, where they need to be for a lot of these trailers that are built, mainly overseas, and then come over here and are used. In our carnival industry, it becomes like a known thing that you're going to have that truck that has the sliding fifth wheels, and that at least go over the back axle. And so a lot of our industry, the carnival industry, will customize their trucks to where they're able to do that, and that makes it beneficial to them. But on my side, it makes it very challenging because I don't want to, every time that I have to send a truck in to test, let's say, it I have to pay that truck, whether it's a few $100 just to go in and try. And most of the times that's where my vetting will come into play, because I don't want to just waste money, because I won't ask the customer for that money back. If I'm asking, let's Bo Pew or something, hey, I have to pay that truck, but I didn't get the right equipment for you. That's not Bo's responsibility, or Andy Degler's responsibility to pay for that, because I didn't get the right equipment. So I got to make sure that I get the right equipment for what is needed out there. So it becomes challenging. We then have to play with dispatchers who don't even know what a fifth wheel is. And then tell them I need pictures. I need to know how far it is from the landing gear or from the fifth wheel to the back of the frame. It becomes a little challenging, but we work through it. And we, knowing all of these things, coming from the industry, from the carnival industry, and seeing how these things are loaded, seeing the requirements of the load and what they are, gave me the insight into, and also driving a truck myself, gave me all of the knowledge that kind of has really been able to build me a good base throughout on the truck side and the carnival side, to be able to be that middleman that I am when I'm hired to find trucks. So I can guide the trucks that maybe aren't the most knowledgeable. Pulling into a Walmart is one thing when you're just backing up to a door, right? Pulling into, let's say, the Meadowlands that has 13 different parking lots and 30,000 things going on, and these guys don't know where to go to take this load where they wanted to drop. That can be quite the challenge on that side as well, just trying to tell these guys where to go. And I found that one of the benefits of my knowledge base from Galaxy is just being there on the lot and knowing where to take these things, and who to call at the time, when they arrive. It's not just, most of the time they're not just dropped off at in some distant lot that nobody knows where it is. So just another one of those tricks to the trade that I found come in helpful.
So who is the first guy you moved with your new company? Who did you reach out to and say, hey, I got a brokerage?
Well, I started that's taking me back a few years. I think one of the first persons I called was probably Lifetime bunkhouses, Otterbacher's. Just because I knew that they were close to me and they were a manufacturer. Mm-hmm. And I think he kind of helped me spread the word a little bit. I want to say it was Thomas Lothar, I think, was the first carnival ride that I actually moved with Lothars. And then right at the same time was probably Bo Pugh with Degler. And yeah, so and then I moved that year for a little bit for Ridehofer and just started to break out. And then the following year, I linked up with Tommy Coughing and started helping him on his side with all of the used rides and moving everything that he had coming off of ships or off of his yard or from this person to that person. So a lot of challenges, especially in the used rides department on my end. I like to say that a lot of these rides are two pieces. You go as a carnival owner, you buy a ride and you go and you check out the ride because that's where the moneymaker is. And sometimes there's been instances where that ride will sit for however long, and then that turns into problems as far as the trailer, the second piece. And so moving that ride, it becomes quite a challenge at times, and you got to go through lots of repairs or lots of tires or whatever is thrown at your point in time. That's one of the things that I've learned that really helps out a lot of the carnival industry is, I don't bother those guys with the problems that may happen at 2:00 in the morning. Such as a blown tire or, an axle or whatever it may be, an airline, an air leak, whatever we have to get repaired. I end up taking on those for the customer and just getting the job done to where we can get it moving and getting it over to, if it becomes a little bit out of my league, I know, simple tires are something that most, companies aren't that are okay with just getting fixed because they need to get fixed. Right. But if it becomes like an axle problem, I've had a couple of them where I've had to we've had to park for 3 weeks and have to do repairs on axles and rebuild axles. And so that's when it starts to, get a little bit out of my reach, and I just confirm with the customer at that point. Make a call to Tommy and tell him, hey, this is what's going on, and this is what we need to do. And we team it up together at that point. But most of the repairs we take on, and we just end up sending the invoice and attaching it to the invoice that we have coming to you for the repairs. But I take on that responsibility as the broker. It's in my hands, so we do what we got to do to get it there, get it from point A to point B without having to bother the customers too much. They got enough headaches on their own to deal with.
Once you started moving things, did word spread pretty rapidly? You were getting a lot of calls, or did you have to reach out to them? But I imagine they came to you a lot of times.
Yes and no. It definitely, the carnival industry, the word spreads very quickly, pretty much about anything. And so, yes, it did spread. And it definitely did start to take off and started getting calls. There was, when I linked up with Tommy Coughing, there was a lot of people that I didn't even know existed. That I never really, I didn't even really understand, or I didn't even know half the people that he gave me in the industry. I didn't know how many Canadian shows we had, because I mainly stuck down to the States. And so I know all the States guys, but there was a lot of shows up in Canada that are, moving and doing the same thing. And so there was a lot of random calls that I would get, and, oh yeah, hey, how's it going? And then we would start to build off of that. And now we work with, I think I have probably a list of about 77 or so shows or single independent carnival ride owners or game owners or whatever, roughly about 77. And then I work with a number of stock shows. So we, are stock companies, and where we load up a dry van and send game stock to those. I also, work with Fair Foods, and we load reefers and, get product to them sometimes, and, help when they can't supply, when they don't have a truck in a logistical hop jump to them, to one of their trailers or whatever. So yeah, I like to think that I play a big part in the carnival industry.
Yeah, you do.
There's definitely there's definitely still room to grow, as there always is. There's always more reach, and but yeah, I like to think that my relationships that I grew and over the 5 years of working with Galaxy have really blessed me with the knowledge and the know-how of keeping into the carnival industry. And that's also probably one of the things that I've learned is, you got to staying in contact is one of the biggest things. I don't have any need to go to IAPA anymore necessarily. But it's good to that's the one of the few times a year that I get to see everybody that I used to see out on the road. So I take the time and I go out there, for the past 3-4 years, I've been out there all week and just to, party and hang out and just kind of, get reacclimated and realistically show face and be able to, still be involved in the industry. Is a huge blessing, because it was it was a very sweet part of my section of my life that was definitely blessed upon me.
You what percentage of the shows are you doing most of their moving, like week in and week out? I know on the shorter jumps it probably doesn't make as much sense, but certainly the longer jumps, so they're almost completely relying on you, or they still move some things.
Yeah, they still move themselves. For the most part, there's times where, like I stated earlier, where it gets tricky on their part, and it just doesn't get cost efficient to move without hiring trucks. So it's really dependent on different times of the year and kind of when it, what show is going on at that time. I move a lot for Degler. I would probably estimate, it's hard because I don't really know. I don't really know what, how many loads in total, let's just say Degler has in total. They will call me and they'll tell me, hey, I need 10 trucks to move from here to here. And then as far as what percentage that is, I don't know. I don't know how many they're moving on their own. I know they have a lot. And so when they have 10 coming from this spot and 10 coming from this spot, and then there's, some of the shows split up into different units, it can be a good portion of it. But yeah, don't really know the percentage, but there's some shows that call me. I know RCS, I've helped them with probably close to 200 trucks this year so far. And we're about, maybe halfway through. So, it's
like a relatively compact season. They only play
eight jumps a year. So it's not, but they have some big ones and some small ones, and some tight windows, as far as when they moved from Tucson over to Pomona this past year. That was actually the time crunch was the big thing, and so I actually flew out to Tucson and kind of helped load the trucks this
Mm.
year, and was kind of hopefully I was a big help, but I don't know. As I was booking trucks, I was also loading them and telling them what trailers to hook under, and guiding them around to where we can tag team it and kind of let people get over to Pomona to start setting up, instead of having to double back and pick up loads and waste 8 hours driving back. So,
yeah, and then there's the order of moving too, which is tricky sometimes. As you have you mentioned a giant wheel before, or maybe a roller coaster, where you need certain loads first or certain loads at the same time.
Yes.
That can get super tricky too, because there's nothing worse than having one load but not having a key load you need to start setting up, and then it gets pushed to the end or for whatever reason.
For sure.
So making sure things are in order are really important too, I would imagine.
Yeah, driving around a midway is definitely another trick that I learned can be very challenging. It's very carnival specific. And if you got games and rides that are already set up, and then you got one piece that needs to go into the center, getting it in there can be quite tricky. And so you never want to mess up the order, like you said, of these loads coming in or coming out.
Yes, it's not just like you said, like Walmart. You're just brokering. Okay, send the truck. They're going to go over there and
go find the door.
Exactly.
There's none of that.
Making sure you send the right loads and in the right order, and they get there so they can set up efficiently. The logistics are really interesting with our business, because it is there's so many moving parts in there. It's just tough to keep track of everything. But with 77,
that's for sure.
Yeah, with 77 carnivals, you must have quite the database of, or I guess you get used to it over time. But first couple times it's got to be a challenge, because there's always something.
Yeah, the first year was definitely a challenge. I was kind of breaking my feet into this side of the industry, and it was there were things that I learned. I definitely had to go through the growing pains, and I think in the carnival industry plus the trucking industry, there's always something new to learn, and I'm always very open to that. I'm still learning things on a day-to-day basis. I think I got a good knowledge base of how to accurately do things these days, but still open to learning, to where you can it's a revolving door, so you can always learn something. But it was a challenge. I grew a team, so I most of my carnival industry probably knows my right hand. Her name is Miranda. She started green, but I taught her very well how to do the job and all the requirements, and she absolutely loves it. She loves hanging out with when I bring her to Top Golf to do the challenge there. When we all get down together in Gibsonton, she just loves hanging out with everybody, and the challenge of it. It's not just a point A to point B. There's challenges that come with it, and she's very good at being able to talk to the drivers and find what the specifics. And yeah, so I like to kind of be, the relationship holder between me and the carnival industry, and she's kind of the go-to person as far as being the secondary eyes on the ground, getting exactly what is needed for the job to be done. It was a challenge at the beginning, and we got a good foot over the past couple years, and now the carriers, we're starting to build our base as far as what carriers are, reliable and have particular equipment. And so yeah, it was definitely a challenge at the beginning, and just growing from here on out.
Well, I guess one of the other challenges is calling you last minute with needs, I guess. In our industry, a lot of people don't plan sometimes, or they do plan and then something comes up, and it's That's got to be a challenge if you're already moving 10 other shows and you got, big demand or for your loads that week or for your trucks that week. And then somebody calls you and they want 20 trucks,
Oh
on
yeah.
Saturday and it's Wednesday or something like that. It makes it rough.
Yeah, for sure. And things happen, trucks break down all the time, this guy gets sick and can't drive. So yeah, surprises always come about, and that's, coming from the carnival industry, that kind of taught me a lot about myself as far as rolling with the punches. And it doesn't matter, the show must go on, and so you just figure out a way to get it done, um, to the best of the ability. And that's I learned that from being on the midways with a lot of these carnival shows. Things that you think may seem impossible uh, aren't necessarily always impossible. You just gotta work through it and get it done somehow, some way.
Yeah, exactly. Somehow, some way. That's the key. So you've got have some of these drivers called you with some interesting story, like I pull up and they a load that looks like something they never saw before, and
Yeah, actually, I had a driver. So I work with Batek out in Salem, Working,
yeah,
and we actually just went to go pick up a zero gravity from them last week. That was going out for Dreamland,
yeah, Dreamland. I
and
saw a picture of it yesterday, as a matter of fact.
okay, good.
The load
So
looked
yeah,
good though. Got there safe.
oh yes, it did. Thank God. But I had a guy who has hauled for me before, had the sliding fifth wheel that was required, and he ended up having a family medical emergency, and his mom ended up passing away.
Hmm.
And so he had to jump on a plane. He parked his truck and jumped on a plane and went home. And I had him booked on that load. Well, he canceled on me, obviously, and so I had to like immediately scramble to find somebody, because then we had to get it over to, all the way from Oregon to New York by yesterday. So I had to get it very quickly, a truck, and to recover it. And so I sent a truck in, and he took one look at this, and this guy in particular didn't necessarily ever run a carnival load for me before. His company had ran other, Walmart loads, simple loads, in our company. So we had a good relationship with the company, but him specifically pulled in and saw this carnival ride. And I'm sure if you know what a zero gravity looks like mounted on a trailer, it can be a little intimidating as well. And he took one look at it and said, "Hell no," and turned around and drove out of there.
Took
And
off. Oh
so,
no.
yeah, so it was then scramble for another one that was willing to do the job and make sure that they, some of these can be intimidating, the way they're built and the way they fold onto each other, and to kind of just trust the fact that they're going to stay on the trailer and nothing's going to fall off and kill somebody. So, we scrambled, we got it done. But yeah, there's a lot of those types of situations that happen, where, sometimes I think we had a load 2 years ago that was a super singles, had these big super singles tires on them, and it was coming across all the way from California all the way across the states, and it blew one of the tires. We couldn't find the tires. The guy ended up having to drive to get off of this, the side of the road, and so it messed up the rim. Then we couldn't find the rim, and it just became a headache. And the driver essentially went and picked it up, or went and dropped the trailer on the side of the road and just left it there. And so thank God I had location on the trailer, and as soon as I, got word, which it only sat there for maybe 3 hours on the side of the road unhooked. But I got a guy with a tow truck to go and pick it up and kind of chain up the axle to where we could get it off the road, and he took it to his yard. So, definitely some interesting characters out here in the carnival industry, and or in the trucking industry, might I
Yeah,
say,
that's right.
that don't that don't know what the carnival ride is worth. That was a over $1 million ride that was just left on the side of the road, and thank God, with my whereabouts and being able to recover it quickly with a tow truck, and get it to a safe spot. There's
It's a good thing he
I can't.
wasn't moving a Brinks truck. You'd have been in trouble. So drop
Yeah, for
money
sure.
off on the side of the road. So
Exactly.
do you ever sleep on a Sunday? Or Sunday? I mean, I've moved a carnival before, and it's a nightmare with one show. I can't even imagine what your life must be like on Sunday. With I don't know how many you move on a weekly basis, but it's a lot with all the potential breakdowns and problems. It must just be it must be a sleepless night on most Sundays.
Yeah, there's been plenty of them, and not just on Sundays. That's pretty much 7 days a week. Plus, I have two very young children. A 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. So, it started probably with the Galaxy truck. To be honest with you, there was, you don't ever really get much sleep being a Galaxy guy. So, you're either driving or you're partying or you're working the truck. So. It was always fun to just be alive and be around, and when you're parked next to the Flying Bobs on a midway, you don't sleep much until the show stops anyways. So I was very used to it, and you know it's in my blood to just be awake. So I'm always expecting the worst case scenarios, and I'm always prepared for those as well. So
When the phone
comes with the territory.
when the phone rings on Sunday into Monday, it's probably never good news, right? Yay, we made it safely. I just want to let you know everything went perfect. That
I
those
mean,
phone calls don't happen. They're more broke down.
they
My tire broke.
no. I mean, we've definitely started to be able to eliminate those problems. We've with that knowledge base and the experience that we've been going through. It's started to tame itself a little bit.
Good.
We find drivers that are reliable, that know, not you know accidents happen, obviously, but
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
just
they're a
yeah,
little bit more aware to where they're not jumping curbs, they're not hitting trees. I mean, those things do happen, and
those are sort of
you can only
unforced errors that happen. But things
exactly.
just happen when you got that many wheels spinning. I
Yes,
guess when you think about it,
for sure.
hundreds and hundreds of
But when
wheels
you
spinning
when you
and
do the
things.
due diligence into getting into them, it really pays off in the long run, because the due diligence is something that everybody's taught in any industry, and as long as you're doing your due diligence, it'll pay off for you, and those little problems can kind of dissipate on themselves. Um, one of the sides I talked a little bit about insurance earlier, uh, and one of the things that my company offers is what we call an all risk, and we have the ability to, if something does happen, a ride, worst case scenario, I've never had this happen, thank God. I'm gonna knock on some wood just in case, but say a ride rolls over or catches on fire and burns down to the side on the side of the road, which I'm sure most carnival owners have had to deal with before. Thankfully, none from me, but we have those instances where we can add all risk insurance to it, to where it covers the entirety of the load. Most of these driving companies will only cover up to $100,000, because that's what's required by law. We can then add from there all the way up to $7 million. And with a carnival ride where you're, let's just say, the grand wheel with RCS, could be worth, $4 or $5 million,
Yeah.
and one load, it burns to the ground, you lose out on $4 or $5 million because you can't set up a load or that ride because of one of your loads is melted to the ground. So we have that ability to add insurance. We also have the ability to bypass that insurance because, let's say you're moving 10 loads that are all, each trailer is $300,000. It just doesn't make sense to add the money to each load for a 50 or a 200-mile jump,
Yeah.
10 times for each particular load. Now, if you have one specific, it's where it kind of comes into play. But also the carnival industry that I've learned, all of their insurance, they have their own insurance that covers cargo
The
or
cargo and
our,
stuff.
hired drivers as well. And so, me taking on the responsibility of your load, we can be responsible of up to what we can hold the carrier responsible for, which is the 100,000. But then, your insurance can be the secondary. So if we have 300, so we'll take care of the first 100,000, and unless it's a full total out of the trailer, the chances of it getting over $100,000 worth of damage,
It's minimal.
are kind of, yeah, it's kind of minimal.
Well, hopefully,
So
I mean, it's a nice benefit to have for sure. I mean, it's definitely
yeah,
makes you stand out and makes things easier.
yep,
We're actually up against the clock here. It's been an hour, believe it
yep.
or not. And
Wow, that went quick.
I know, no kidding. Well, thank you so much for the stories and the information. I know it's a little thought of area of our business, but it's so important. But thanks for
Yeah,
joining us,
for sure.
and hopefully we'll see you in Gibtown or someplace down the road.
Awesome. Thank you, Ronna. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Seth. This podcast is brought to you by Innovative Ticketing is the ticketing source made for the amusement industry. Our staff of professionals can guide you through your setup, assist with customer service, even on the weekends when you most need it, and help increase your sales through promotions that work. Innovative Ticketing is the ticketing source made for the amusement industry. Sign up today at innovativeticketing.com.